If you tried to book dinner in Spain at 6 p.m., the restaurant might not even be open. In the United States, though, 6 p.m. is a very normal dinner time. Kids are eating, parents are heating up food, someone is already asking for ranch. By 7 p.m., the kitchen often feels closed. That sounds healthy at first. Eating early should be good for you, right? But in the US, though, that habit may be part of a much bigger problem. And the reason has almost nothing to do with nutrition advice. It has to do with farms, factories, work culture, rushed lunches, late-night snacks, and one big trap that starts after dinner. Stay with me. By the end, you'll see why Americans eat at 6, why many other countries do not, and why the real damage may happen long after dinner is over. In the US, dinner usually happens between 5 and 7 p.m. Around 6 p.m. feels pretty normal. In France or Italy, that would feel early. In Spain or Portugal, it can feel almost ridiculous. There, dinner often starts at 9, 10, or even 11 p.m. If you are hungry at 6 p.m. in those places, local people might think you are eating very, very early. You might hear this and think, Americans eat early because they are more disciplined, more health-focused, or more organized. That is not really true. The American dinner schedule was not created by doctors, it was created by work. A few hundred years ago, many Americans lived on farms. Farm life starts early, very early. Not, I woke up at 7 and feel productive early. More like 4 or 5 in the morning. Animals do not care if you want more sleep. Back then, the biggest meal of the day often happened in the middle of the day. That meal was often called dinner. The evening meal was lighter, more like supper. That made sense. If you had worked hard since sunrise, you needed a big meal before the day ended. Then came industrialization. People started working in factories and later in offices. They could not go home for a huge meal in the middle of the day anymore. So the main meal moved to the evening, after work. But work still started early, so dinner settled into the 5 to 6 p.m. range. In other words, Americans do not eat at 6 because science found a perfect health window. They eat at 6 because the 19th century workday became part of modern life. On top of that, America built a strong idea around this schedule: early to bed, early to rise. That idea became linked to productivity, discipline, and self-control. There is a deep cultural feeling that waking up early means you are living the right way. Which is funny because many people are still awake at 11:47 p.m., scrolling on their phones with snack crumbs on their shirts. Still, that old schedule stayed. And that matters, because once you realize dinner time came from farm and factory life, a bigger question appears. If 6 p.m. made sense for people who woke up at sunrise and went to bed early, what happens when modern people eat at 6 but stay awake until 11 p.m. or midnight? That is where things get interesting. The real issue may not be dinner itself. It may be the long, empty stretch after dinner. But first, we need to talk about lunch. Yes, lunch. In America, it may be the most ignored meal, except maybe for people eating almonds over a keyboard. A huge number of American workers eat lunch at their desks. They do not eat slowly, they do not eat socially, they do not enjoy it. They just eat to get through the day. Maybe it is a salad eaten between emails, a sandwich while answering messages, leftovers eaten with the same energy as paying a parking ticket. So what happens when lunch is small, rushed, or skipped? You get very hungry by late afternoon. That means dinner at 6 becomes big, maybe too big. And because dinner is still early, you may get hungry again later anyway. Now compare that with places like Spain. There, lunch is often much larger and much more social. If your main meal happens in the afternoon, you do not reach 6 p.m. feeling desperate. Dinner can then be lighter, later, and calmer. That contrast shows something important about American food culture. It is not just about when people eat, it is about how the whole day is built around work first and food second. And when food becomes something you squeeze in, instead of something you actually experience, your body usually notices. If you like this kind of story, you should probably subscribe.
That is basically what we do here. We take normal habits that seem boring and then we make them impossible to see the same way again. This is where people often make the wrong comparison. They see Spain eating dinner at 10 p.m. and think maybe late dinners are healthier. Not so fast. Eating late is not automatically good. In many cases, it can actually be worse. Your body has its own internal clock, and it does not handle calories the same way at every hour.
There is a growing area of research called chrononutrition. That is just a fancy way of saying when you eat matters, not only what you eat. Your body usually handles food better earlier in the day. Blood sugar control is often better earlier. Insulin usually works more efficiently earlier. The same meal can affect your body differently at noon than at 10 p.m. So in theory, eating dinner earlier should help. And that creates the big contradiction in this story. If early dinner is supposed to be better, why are so many Americans still dealing with weight gain, metabolic problems, and all the trouble that comes with them? That is the real question. And the answer is not really on the dinner plate. It is what happens after. A huge number of Americans snack after dinner, and not just once in a while. For many people, the real second dinner starts around 9:30 p.m. Chips, ice cream, cookies, delivery, whatever is easiest, saltiest, sweetest, and closest to the couch. Once you notice this pattern, you cannot unsee it. An early dinner at 6 sounds healthy on paper, but if you stay awake until 11 or 12, that leaves 4, 5, or even 6 hours open. Humans are very good at filling open time with snacks. That is even more likely if lunch was sad, dinner was rushed, and bedtime keeps getting later. This is the twist. It is not 6 p.m. that is making people sick. It is what happens between 8 p.m. and midnight. That is the trap. A lot of Americans eat a huge part of their daily calories after 6 p.m., and those calories are usually not coming from grilled fish and steamed vegetables. They often come from ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are basically designed to keep you eating. They do not fill you up for long, they are convenient, they taste very strong, and they are weirdly easy to eat while telling yourself, I'm not really hungry. You know that move where you open a bag for a few bites and then suddenly you are shaking out crumbs? That is not just a lack of self-control. That is product design doing exactly what it was made to do. This is where meal timing and weight loss crash into each other. Studies suggest that when people eat more of their calories earlier in the day, they often do better with blood sugar control and weight regulation. That does not mean your body becomes magical at 8 a.m. It means eating earlier fits better with how your body naturally works. Earlier calories are usually easier to handle. Late night grazing is usually harder. So yes, eating dinner early can help, but only if dinner is actually the end of eating. If dinner at 6 turns into snacks at 9, dessert at 10, and I deserve a little something, the benefit can disappear. Sometimes it disappears completely. There is another layer here, and it makes everything worse: sleep. If you eat early, stay up late, snack late, and then sleep badly, you usually wake up hungrier the next day. Poor sleep increases hunger signals. It also makes sugary and high-carb foods more tempting. So the next day starts with cravings. Lunch gets rushed again. Dinner comes early again. Late night snacking comes back again. That is not just a bad habit. That is a loop. And honestly, it is a very American loop. Wake up early. Work fast. Eat lunch at your desk. Eat dinner at 6. Watch TV. Scroll on your phone. Snack. Go to sleep too late. Wake up tired. Repeat. To be fair, countries with late dinners are not automatically doing everything right either. In Mediterranean countries, eating very late can also cause problems, especially if it gets too far out of line with sleep and the body's natural rhythm. So this is not a simple story of America bad, Spain good. That would be too easy. The real difference is alignment. In Spain, people often eat later and also sleep later, so the time between dinner and bed may be shorter than it sounds.
Meals are also often slower, more social, and more intentional. In the US, dinner is often early, fast, and followed by hours of snacking alone. That social part matters more than many people think. In many countries, dinner is an event. In America, it is often a task. It is something to finish before dishes, before homework, before one more episode, before falling onto the couch. Meals are often shorter. People are more distracted. Dinner is more likely to happen with a screen than with a conversation. And when eating stops feeling like a real moment, it becomes easier for the brain to keep chasing more food later. So why do Americans eat at 6? Here is the sneaky answer. Americans eat dinner at 6 p.m. because history trained them to. Farms started early. Factories shaped the workday. Productivity culture made early schedules feel good and virtuous. Modern office life destroyed the big midday meal that used to balance everything out. But that early dinner only makes some people sick because it no longer matches the rest of modern life. The problem is not the clock. The problem is the whole system around it. An early dinner followed by a long waking gap can create trouble. Add in ultra-processed snacks, poor sleep, rushed lunches, and distracted eating, and you get exactly the kind of pattern that bodies struggle with. So no, the answer is not simply eat like the Spanish or copy another country. The answer is much simpler and also much more annoying. It means we cannot blame one number on the clock. The healthier move is to make your eating pattern fit your real life. If you eat at 6, that is fine, but maybe don't turn the next 5 hours into a snack marathon. If you go to bed late, maybe dinner should move later too. If lunch is always tiny and rushed, that probably matters more than you think. And if meals have become purely functional, turning them back into real meals may help more than another nutrition trick. Americans do not eat dinner at 6 p.m. because science told them to. They eat at 6 because a work system from another century told them to. And a lot of bodies are still paying for that. So here is the main point. Early dinner is not automatically bad. Late dinner is not automatically good. The real danger may be the long, snack-filled gap after an early meal. Add in rushed lunches and bad sleep, and now you have a pattern, not just a preference. Now I'm curious, what time do you eat dinner where you live? And do you usually eat again later? If you liked this, subscribe, stick around, and I'll see you in the next one.